Welcome back after a week of the midterm break. We're excited to continue on our journey through the global food system. And tonight's presentation I'm looking forward to enormously. Before I introduce our speaker this evening, just a couple of announcements. First of all, the Detroit Food Policy Council is sponsoring the Detroit Food Summit at the end of this week, Thursday and Friday, in Detroit, in downtown Detroit, and they have a very good website. If you go to the Detroit Food Policy Council website, you will see the agenda, the speakers, the workshops, and directions and so forth. A number of us are going from the class, and those of you who are potentially interested in earning extra credit for the course, who are students who are enrolled in the course, this is one of your ways to do so, as we've explained in some messages. So check that out. It should be very interesting. Just a word of acknowledgement to our sponsors who are helping us to put on this wonderful group of speakers. And then one more announcement. The University of Michigan Campus Farm is hiring summer interns, and there's some instructions here about about how to apply. The person who runs it, Jeremy, where are you? Okay, just raise, if you want to talk to the person who runs the Campus Farm and who will be sorting through the applications, talk to Jeremy. But this is a wonderful opportunity to get involved over the summer and learn more about growing food and how the Campus Farm can be interfacing with the food system that's all around us. And so with that, then, I would like to introduce you this evening to our speaker, Fernando Funes Monzote. Fernando is from a distinguished family of agroecologists, that is, people who are specialists in the understanding the ecological principles that we apply to a truly sustainable agriculture. And he and his parents and other members of his family have been instrumental in both developing and implementing ecological approaches to agriculture in Cuba for over 25 years. The family lives in Cuba, and but they're very engaged with conversations about ecological agriculture all over the world. And Cuba, as a result of the efforts of Fernando's family and folks like him, has become an example to the world about how it's possible to actually grow a substantial portion of the food for the country using agroecological principles. And so they present us an example in both rural and urban contexts of a very vibrant, successful, innovative kind of ecological agriculture that has inspired many people, visitors and non-visitors alike. Now, Fernando holds a PhD in agroecology from the University of Wageningen in the Netherlands. He is a founding member of the Cuban Association of Organic Agriculture, and so he's very deeply embedded in a lot of the grassroots efforts and national efforts to promote more organic methods in Cuba. In 2014, Lily and I took a class of 15 students to Cuba for 2 weeks as part of a spring term course, Food, Land, and Society, that I've been co-teaching for a number of years. And the highlight of our trip was a visit to Fernando's farm, Finca Marta, that we'll learn about tonight, where Fernando hosted all of us for a day, and there we learned many of the struggles and achievements of himself and his community of co-workers, and in particular, the image of the old well and the new well, which is the theme of his presentation this evening, struck all of us as an amazing metaphor for the kind of transformation that we all need to be working on around the world. And so he's going to share with us tonight some of the insights that were so important to us several years ago. So please join me in welcoming Fernando.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Lily, Mariah, making possible me to come here. Thank you all for coming tonight to talk together with me about dilemmas and metaphors for agriculture. I didn't want to bring here a presentation about figures, about Cuban agriculture, about the success of many of the programs were carried out in our agricultural system in the last 20-25 years, But I wanted to talk about a metaphor we experience in practice in our own project called Finca Marta, after in memory of my mother and a Cuban agroecologist that spent most of her life, her scientific life, in searching ways for the development of agroecology in our country. As Catherine was saying, we received a group of the university in our farm 4 years ago, and it was a pleasure to share with them. If some of you maybe are here or not, part of our dreams at that time, only 2 years after we started this project. There were very difficult times. You see here how we were starting to have some trace of vegetables, and we were trying to figure out what to do at that time. In 4 years, we have been doing a lot. Well, this was the scenario. We had at that time no surface water source, no tap water in the house. We started to live. Our house was in very poor conditions, and the land was very rocky, as the soils were very low fertility, and we had no machinery available. The area was completely covered by invasive species, very difficult to control, thorny, and they regrow very, very well. It is one of the most important problems in Cuban agriculture, and they are called aroma and marabou. And there was for us also a very important difficulty. We had a lack of knowledge, or very little knowledge, about the territory and the people of the area around the farm, and that was a very important challenge to overcome. And coming to the metaphor, we had an old well. The old well, the farmer living in the farm for more than 50 years had to go every second day to look for water. The well this old well is about 500 meters from the house. And he had not the possibility to bring the water to the house, so he had to go continuously for all his life to look for water. That's the situation for many farmers around the world. Some millions of farmers have to walk kilometers to look for water. And then we were very concerned about how to solve the water problem for our future life in the farm, for our expectations to expand the agricultural system. And we started digging a well. Only 15 days after we arrived to the farm, I went for a man. His name is Juan Machado, that has been the well maker in the region for many decades, and he was ready for digging. He's always ready for digging. And we started digging the day of my birthday, the 6th of January, 2012. That was a very happy day. We started digging, and I didn't know that it was so difficult to dig a well in the rock. After 1 meter, we found the very heavy rock, and we were digging for about 7 months. We dug until 14 meters deep, and as you can imagine, for me, being an academic for many years, it was a very big shock. I didn't know what to do. And every day when we started digging again, I was very disappointed. I would say I was frustrated, and I didn't know how to stop and where to stop. This man was my main satisfaction and my main light in seeing what to do in the future, and he didn't see any kind of difficulties. So while digging the well, I started to see that the result or the objective was not only to search for water, but the process itself started to be rich, very rich. by talking to Machado, by hearing his stories about the territory, I started to understand the social dynamic around the farm. I started to meet many people coming to see the well. He was telling the people he was digging the hardest well in his life. And we were together in that operation. There were many people coming to the farm to work, and that was the case of this man, Peter, that started to dig with us, but he dug for only 1.5 months. He stopped, and he didn't see any kind of objective while digging the well. There is something very important. I had to trust on Machado, and the trust was very big. So we had to wait 7 months to reach water. And in the end, we reached a very good water source that we use continuously for our life since then. So it was not a loss of time. The expectations were many, and we reached our objectives. Then many metaphors started to come, like this one, where when there is any difficulty impossible to overcome, to face the challenge gives you enough strength to transform. You can break walls. You can overcome any difficulty if you really have enough will to continue in the process. And this is another metaphor, another explanation of the metaphor, that an opportunity to feel frustration was the opportunity to dig the well. So if you feel frustrated, if you feel pain during the process, you value more the results or what you achieve. A tunnel without an end, not seeing a light, gives you a sense of foundation, gives you a sense of you are really fighting for something that you are not really sure, but when you find it, you value it a lot. And raise the capacity of feeling doubt while valuing the journey more than the result. It is a very important part of this metaphor. This is another part of the metaphor. If you never fail, you're not trying hard enough. And we were failing for several months because we didn't find the water, and we were very eager to find the water. I even didn't know if one day I will find it. But in the end, one day after rains, in the months of May, water started to come into the well. And it was a weekend. Machado was not in the farm. And I called my sons, and we took a bath. We took a bath in the well. It was a very happy day to see. After several months, the water started to go down and disappear again. So the next year, we had to dig for 4 more months. But many dilemmas emerged during the process of digging the well, and this is one of them. Are people ready to engage in agriculture? Are people ready to engage in this kind of very rustic, difficult works? And they are ready to make these extraordinary efforts to change our food system? That's not sure for me. So I want to make a question. Would you like to become a farmer and live from agriculture? Yes, I'm ready to spend the rest of my life farming. No, I don't feel prepared. Yes, I have the right conditions. If I have the right conditions, I never consider it. And it's going to be the wrong decision of my life. So, think well. It is not a decision to take in some seconds. I took several years to get decided. After many of the dreams and conversations with my mother, who wanted to have a farm, now the farm has her name, and we make every day a celebration of her and her passion for agriculture. And when you want to make these kind of steps, you need symbols. The symbols move you ahead. Symbols give you a strength of what you do and give you enough adrenaline to go ahead, even with many difficulties. So now we have the results already.
Most people said C.
I answered A 6 years ago. Can you show me the results? You cannot see the results in the screen? Well, let's see. 38% say yes if I have the right conditions. You never have the right conditions. You are not going to have the right conditions. You have to face difficulties, not only to have a farm. In your life, you never have the right conditions. But 24% say B. It's right. Nobody feels prepared for that. But 6% say A. We know less than 1% of the population in the United States is involved in agriculture. So this is a good sample of people wanting to restore that situation or to reverse that situation. And that's the same case in Cuba. Even in undeveloped country with a matrix of agriculture in, let's say, in precarious or in difficult conditions, only 5% of the people are directly engaged in agriculture. You cannot imagine that. But we had a long period of industrial agriculture in Cuba of about 30 years after a long tradition of monocultures where the matrix of the Cuban population changed. At the beginning of the revolution, we had about, in 1959, we had 75 to 80% of the population living in the countryside, and only 25% of the people living in the cities. And that has changed drastically in only 10 to 20 years. And the situation improved in some way the access to education, to medical care, and to other services for people in the cities. But in the other hand, we had a very difficult problems with the rooted of people living in rural areas. And I need the slide.
Yeah.
Or I can continue. Then
you never have the right conditions.
You never have the right conditions that you have to figure out how to do. And when you think in having a farm or getting engaged in agriculture, you start thinking what you need. Because you never have all what you need, then what I propose you is that you have to start. I don't think that starting is a worse decision. It's a bad decision. But when you start, you will start facing difficulties, and the difficulties give you the clues to solve them. Maybe when you try to solve a difficulty, you have two new paths or ways to solve it. Maybe you are creating two new difficulties, but in the way you figure out how to solve them. So I would say that the first answer is the one that I would expect. I would like, but we know that the conditions are really very difficult for people to get engaged in agriculture, and you have to think well if you want to start. Then a second question is, what conditions would you need to engage in agricultural project? So once you decide to start, what conditions? Enough will, resources, opportunities, and knowledge to get engaged, money, lands, markets for your products, a committed partner to share the challenge, and all the above and more. So give your answer. Of course, all the above and more, but don't wait that. Don't wait to have all these conditions or more, because you're not going to have them. So I think having these 4 pillars, these 4 conditions, you can solve most of what you achieve by having a farm, by starting an agricultural project. If you have the will, you have the passion, and you have all the love possible to start farming and to devote your life and your time and your efforts for that, then you have a big part of the success. Then you could have the will, but if you don't have some resources to start, it doesn't mean that you need all the resources you need, but some resources to start trying, then it is very difficult. Some people have resources and have a lot of money, but they don't have the will to start. So they are complementary conditions. And then you need some opportunities. Many of the opportunities you have come from the same scenario where you are. What you have to do is to identify the opportunities, to identify what is an opportunity and how it can help your process going on. And there are other opportunities you can get from outside, from outside of the system. And the knowledge is not the one you have. The knowledge is the one you start constructing from the first day you start the process. And you have to start learning by doing in the same process and to build a new knowledge. When you have more people working with you, when you have the possibility to get engaged, more people in the process, then it's a collective knowledge. You cannot give all the answers. All the people can give different answers, and all the people have their own history, their own knowledge. And that was like we started. We started in all those difficult conditions we mentioned at the beginning, and we had the aim to work for achieving sustainable agriculture, for achieving a management following agroecological practices and methods, ideas, philosophies, and with a big commitment of transformation. That doesn't mean that we had assured the result. The commitment assures that you are committed, that you want to do something, but the uncertainties were very big. So there is one of the dilemmas we have in society that says that it is more important to produce farmers than to produce food. And that's right. When you have farmers, you can produce not only food, but you can replicate the agricultural process. The commitment was in the morning and in the night. In the night, we were preparing for the next day. And here I am preparing the lamins for the hives, for the combs, to produce honey at the beginning of the process. And it comes another dilemma. Are people ready to change their lives and engage in a more sustainable livelihood? So going to live in the countryside implies to change the way you live, the way you develop your life. And we had to change the place where we started to live. We had to construct a better house, and that was one of the priorities for us, not only to live better, to live more comfortably, but also to project another kind of life in the countryside for the people coming to the farm. You can imagine many of my colleagues were telling me that I was completely crazy to go and live in those very precarious situations, but in my mind, I was living in a very comfortable house when I was sleeping in the night. So the need to transform precariousness into prosperity with our own hands and ideas. And we started constructing a new house. And this new house started to be in the way we wanted And we combine different kinds of materials, we combine different kinds of approaches in making the house, and this is how the house looks like today. We build it ourselves, and we spend a lot of time and efforts during day and nights to construct a nice place, comfortable place to live in the countryside. Another dilemma is how to connect traditional agriculture and scientific knowledge. How is possible to make that connection viable and that connection fruitful in terms of designing the farming system and putting in practice many of the processes and technologies together. When we talk about the metaphor of the well, we have to talk about the combination of the very rustic well we dug for 7 months in the rock and the use of solar panels. Some months after we ended to dig the well, we had the possibility to acquire a solar pump. And there is a perfect combination between modern and old technologies there, shown in that metaphor. This is the barn we constructed with the rocks of the well, we extracted from the well, plus the rocks we gathered from the fields. And we have the solar panels here, and we have the well in this area. So how to harmonize, how to put them together in the benefit of the system. And there is a very important thing, and it's that the technologies come after the ideas, after the matrix of the system you are conforming. We build we build first the biodigester and then later the barn, and we brought the animals there. So we had first the infrastructure, and then we brought the animals to feed the technology or to feed the system to produce biogas. Now, and for the last 4.5 years, we produce 2 cubic meters of biogas that give us the possibility to cook for about 20 people every day in the farm. We use also plastic shades in order to cover our our beds, and this is also a combination between the rustic beds we have prepared for vegetable cultivation and the modern technologies like microaspersion irrigation systems. So here you see that combination between the modern technologies and the, what happened? Yeah, between the modern technologies and the rustic and let's say artisanal way of agriculture. And I have another question. Which forms of energy have been mentioned so far in this presentation? Biomass, human, oil, water potential. Animal, biogas, human, photovoltaic, and water potential. Animal, photovoltaic, and wind. And animal, biomass, human, and photovoltaic. There is something very important in this kind of multifunctional systems where we put together many technologies, and it's the complementary effect of the different technologies you use in the system. And this not necessarily means more complexity, more difficulties to manage the system. These technologies should work smoothly and effectively without not many interventions of people. Okay, second, right. Well, you are right. Animal, biogas, human, water potential, and what else? I cannot see it here. And photovoltaic. So we combine them in a harmonically way, so we can get lots of benefits from their implementation. This is the first hive we had. And when we talk about the wheel, we had to talk about the time spent in the activities in the farm. As you saw me in the previous picture, we were working at night in order to prepare. This was the first hive we got, and this was a very important opportunity for the farm, talking about the 4 elements or the 4 conditions to start farming or to have start an agriculture project. The opportunities, one of the opportunities important one we have got is the flowers. We had the wild flowers we had around the farm. And we started having bees by mistake, almost. And then later, after a year, we had about 10 hives. And this was a better capture of the opportunities. We had the opportunity to produce about 1 ton of honey the first year. And that was very remarkable. So we got really inspired, really interested in continuing. And this was the first harvest we had, very specific kinds of honey. We were able to produce the first year 5 different kinds of honey, different varieties of honey. They are very good varieties of honey. So we had rewarding results. We had something to get inspired with during the process in the middle of all the precarity. This is nowadays how we have the apiarium in the farm. We have 40 hives in the farm plus 2 more apiariums. In total, we have about 100 beehives, a little bit more than 100 beehives, and we cover about 15 square kilometers in the area. That was a result of work, time, and investment in the operation. The investments came from our own incomes. I didn't have other incomes other than the production we started to achieve during the process. And there are about 4 million bees to care. So the responsibility is bigger and bigger. And when people ask me about the animals we have in the farm, we mention the cows, we mention the horses, we mention different animals, but when we mention that we have 4 million animals, they say, where are them? So they are the bees. They are able to produce 6 tons of honey. They produced last year 6 tons of honey and 100 kilograms of wax and 50 kilograms of pollen. So now we are taking into consideration what are the limits of the system. This year, I could easily double the amount of hives, and I could have 200 hives. But now we are doubting if having more hives or keeping the hives we have, because it is a multifunctional system. We are busy in many other things. We are busy, for example, this is a mobile harvesting unit we got recently. So we can move the hives now to the coast, and then later to the mountains. That means we can keep 30 hives in the farm and bring in the other 70 hives to the other ecosystems, and we can double the production. So we could produce this year about 10 tons of honey, and that's a lot of honey, as you can imagine. We have another situation with the limits you can manage, you have to manage, and it's when we produce mangoes. We cannot process all the mangoes we have, and we need some industrialization of the process. We need capacities to pack, to storage for a better use of the resources we are generating. And that has to be a lot with the markets. These are the lands we got when we came to the farm. That was in 2012. We gathered the rocks. We were using the rocks, making beds. These were the first beds we had in the farm. We had 5, 10 beds. At the beginning, we started growing some vegetables, bringing to the city, selling to the people. People were very happy with the vegetables we were producing. So we continue making beds, adding compost and putting in practice many of the methods available, and continuing adding compost and so on. But at a certain point, there is a dilemma. Adding compost in the fields takes time, effort, and money that you have to spend, labor, and so on. So how to cover the expenses of that activity, of those expenses? But anyway, because we were convinced, we continue adding compost, organic matter into the soils because they were very poor in fertility, and we needed to improve them in many ways. In the end, we have this result. This is not only attractive As you see, this is very productive. We produce many tons of vegetables during the whole year, in winter, fall, spring, and summer. So in the whole year, as you see, as you saw before, we cover it. Now, in this moment, we have covered the area because the sun intensity is too high. And we were improving the area. We were using, as you see here, the rocks to make the beds, and we have here 100 beds. Beyond this, we have 400 more beds. And the scale that we have already in vegetable production is quite considerable. Now we are 18 people in the farm. They all get good salaries. We are valuing what we do. And we have to go to that scale when we talk about improving the livelihoods. People want to improve their lives. It's not a matter of subsistence agriculture, it's a matter of how to produce more, how to make a benefit, and how to improve the life of the people in the countryside. And this is true not only for Cuba, but for many other countries, that now we have better conditions than ever for the decentralization of agriculture, to make it happen in different scenarios and to make it work, diversify and heterogeneous agriculture on small and medium scale. We have better communication, we have better transportation, we have better information systems, and we can better link producers and consumers. And that is one of the bigger dilemmas and the bigger challenges we have for the future of agriculture everywhere. How to decentralize, how to make it profitable for more people and part of the rural development around the world. This is part of the harvest we have. We produce more than 60 different kinds of vegetables during the year, and in the week scale, we produce about 25 that we commercialize 2, but now 3 times in a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we sell to about 30 restaurants, but now we also commercialize to many social institutions. Because the government saw the impact we are achieving from our activities, then we got through a cooperation system, this walk-in freezer or this cooling unit, where we storage our production and we avoid losses of our produce. We were modernizing the system, and now we have these nurseries. We have 4 of these, and we produce lots of seedlings for reproducing the system. That was the key factor of success for starting this new farm. This is Finca Marta 2. This is closer to town, in the better lands of Cuba, plenty of water. As you see, plain areas with lots of potential. And we are making an impact. See? Something is happening here that, well, doesn't like to work. This is an area of only half a hectare where we are producing lots of vegetables for the local markets. The people is one of the main drivers for development and for transformation. And as I explained you, many of the people started to come to see when the well when we were digging. So the connection with them is the best way to make a social impact for the transformation of the food system at local level. So we have to start with the people, and then everything comes later. Celebration is a very important factor for this kind of processes where many people are engaged and have not only to work hard, but also celebrate and enjoy the process. So that's the most important way how to raise awareness, how to feel economic and spiritual aspiration of people and achieve, in general, the social equity in the system. We have to be proud of our harvest in order to continue working ahead. And something is very important is how to spread the message, how to tell other people the best message and really raise inspiration, not tell the people what to do and how to do it, but raise inspiration for people to make it in their own way. We receive also groups in the farm. Now, we decided for the last 2 years to receive 1 or 2 groups per week. We don't receive more, although we have lots of requests, but agrotourism is one of the activities we do. It's not the most important activity. And we need time for other things. And we have to come back to the well anytime and to search inspiration in that metaphor that gave us the strength to start and to continue this journey during all these years in order to build new ideas from practice. The new generations, these are my sons with a friend, and this was the first infrastructure we built in the farm, the soccer field. They were really happy when they had the possibility to play in the field, and at the same time they were living the experience inside the countryside. My wife Claudia shows that if you care and love, if you care and love more the things you had to fight for. So if you fight for something, then you care them more. So we pay a lot of attention for trust, respect, and love, participation and cooperation, and sharing aspiration, dreams, and benefits for people. We had, in this journey, we had passed for different phases. The first was, I call, in the middle of nowhere, where we had nothing to take or to make use of. The search of new ideas came during the process. Then later, we started to learn by doing collectively, not only individually, but we started to to connect the knowledge all of us had during the process. Then it came the design of the system components, and we started to improve later the management of them, to refine every connection, every function. Then we were in possibilities to integrate different social actors during the process. And now we have the possibility to think about the expansion of the concept and the practice. We are proposing now the local authorities to build a sustainable agrarian community around the farm and to build 5 new farms with people that have been engaged and working during the process in the farm. So they know already the approach and they are ready to start their own processes, their own families. And in that way, I think we can build collectiveness from the individualities of people building their own processes. We have lots of things to do in the future, but we foresee or we focus on these 4 main areas for work, and it's production on the environment, education and research, commercialization activities, and agrotourism. These are mostly the activities we carry out. And the stakeholders we count with is the people taking part in the process, the local government and the local institutions, the national and international institutions that want to be part, and there are many that shown already their interest in participating. Now we have contracts with several universities and research institutions that want to do research while the process expands in the area, and we have to count also with the commercial enterprises. In the present scenario of Cuban agriculture, there are many opportunities for that. So Finca Marta agroecological project intends to contribute from its own example to the local and global search for food sovereignty. And these are our, let's see if you can see the horses. No, you are not going to see the horses playing in the field. So thank you very much for hearing and participating.
Incredible. That was an incredible presentation. So we have actually more time than we ever had for questions. And do we have mics circulating today? Okay, the first question here.
How long
Test. Hi.
You have up to 35 minutes.
Right.
Hi, my name is Jeff Graczynski. I work at Tendre Farm. Thanks for sharing your story. I appreciated the metaphor and the challenges in the beginning. It helped me relate to what you were talking about. If there are farmers in the audience, American farmers here, who have maybe traveled a similar journey to yours to some extent and face similar challenges, what is the most important thing that you hope they take away from your presentation tonight?
The most important thing we can get from this message is the commitment we need to have to transform the agricultural system. If we don't get engaged in this kind of processes, they are going to be different, they are going to have their own characters, they are going to have their own impact in many different levels. But if we don't get engaged in this kind of processes, we are not going to achieve the change in agricultural system. That's definitively the main message.
Other questions? Yes.
One of our issues is access to land, and I'm interested to hear how you went about acquiring the property for your farm and what it will take to expand in your vision of having 5 additional farms.
Well, access to land has been one of the opportunities we had since the beginning, and now these opportunities of having more lands available for the project and for other people has been crucial for us. But that is only one of the conditions you need to develop this kind of processes. The government was distributing more than 1.5 million hectares in Cuba in the last 10 years for people that wanted to start agricultural activities. Lands given in usufruct, so you get the rights of usufruct. Nowadays, for 20 years, guarantee. But as I said before, you need also to have enough will, enough resources, enough opportunities, and you have to build the new knowledge. What happened for many people getting lands in Cuba is that they didn't have a good connection of these 4 components or these 4 conditions, and many of them fail in the process. Especially in times of difficulties for the government, they could not get good grants or good opportunities of investment for their production. And it is a challenge, a big challenge to make the land produce in the proper way. But there is something that has to be with the scale. There are people asking 10 hectares of land or 20 hectares or more, and they cannot even manage half a hectare. So if you start small and you can manage that size of land, then you can start to grow until the moment you have a human scale, or you can really manage properly the area you have. When you have a collective of people, then you can expand that area in a kind of community that can hold bigger or larger amount of areas. But that needs a lot of organization, that needs a lot of common concerns, common goals that lead the process.
Thank you for sharing your farm with us this evening. As you know, I came to visit 4 years ago, and one of the difficulties, or one of the things that our group noticed, was we had an opportunity to meet with someone from the Ministry of Agriculture or something like that. And at the time, we got the impression from him that he wasn't so sure about this agroecological way of farming. And kind of, even then, even though it was only 4 years ago, seemed to kind of poo-poo it, like, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to last. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to the difficulties of having to deal with government, at a government level, or maybe even at a public level, of trying to convince people that this is actually the way to go. Like, what did it take for you to convince the government that this was a sustainable and something that was going to work long term?
The best way to convince people is to show facts, to show things already made. I remember my cousin started to live with us in the farm the first months, and after some time he told me, when everything is ready, call me back. And people want to see things already made, already finished, to have an idea of how it looks like. And now we can show that the impact we are having is not only towards the environment, towards the ecology of the area, but also we are having a social impact, and we are having an economic impact. We're paying lots of taxes to the government, and in that way we are helping activating the local economy. But also we are fulfilling the demands of the social institutions, nurseries and hospitals and schools in town, and they're seeing that it is not only possible, that it is having a bigger and bigger impact in the territory. So they are ready to help, and they get engaged. When we were only two, Machado and me, digging the well, nobody noticed that we were there in the hole. There were only some crazy neighbors coming to see how these two crazy men were digging, and they were telling all kinds of discouraging words to us. They wanted us to stop. Don't continue, it's not having sense. But we started to search for inspiration, and we started to find the sense of what we were doing. Breaking rocks is not something that you can value intellectually or so, but it started to take form during the process, and we started to see lots of revelations in every rock we dug.
So thank you again for coming and speaking. You mentioned decentralizing the agricultural system and how important that was for agriculture in Cuba. And then at the end, under stakeholders, you mentioned national and international institutions. So my question is, what sorts of national and international institutions would be ideal to get on board with this kind of project?
I think many institutions could help. For example, yesterday I've been in touch with the UNDP Small Grants Program, and I put them in contact with the Technical University of Havana. They are interested, we have a contract with the Technical University of Havana. They are interested in applying technologies in the farm and helping building the sustainable agrarian community. We are a team now, so we're searching for opportunities or grants to invest in the new farms. If we had to wait for 6 years to arrive to this point, I say that we need 3 times less time. I say 2 years to establish the new farms, to establish the new 5 farms. And we can get investments for them, and we have an idea about organization, and from Finca Marta we can help them to get improved, and in the meantime they can live like they live in the farm nowadays. So we have lots of potential also for international institutions and for universities in Cuba, schools, the University of the province, Artemisa, that is the province where the farm is. And we are making the puzzle of relationships. The potential is huge, and I would like to see one day students, another time, students from Michigan University coming to our training center, nice training center like you have this here in this university, a nice training center for people to stay and work in the farms and having the experience of relationship between practice and theory.
There's another question in here somewhere a few questions ago. Yes, I thought I saw a hand up.
Now that you have 18 people or so working on the farms, could you talk about how you organize the team and how you make decisions and that sort of thing?
Sometimes people call me chief. I don't want to be the chief, and I refuse to feel like that. Of course, I act like a coordinator or facilitator of the process, but I think the most important thing, that is very important, that people act individually and people can self-organize or self-direct. When you achieve that, you are achieving a lot. It's self-organization. And during the process, you commit lots of mistakes. And what we have seen is that mistakes are very important in the process. You can value the mistakes a lot. And they were a driver for development. As I told before, if you don't try hard, if you don't commit enough, lots of mistakes, you're not trying hard enough. And that was true during this process. And we are not the same than several years ago. We were evolving, we were having more skills in the fields we had not at the beginning, and we were changing ideas and we were changing ways of doing. And that has been very rewarding in some way and very successful way of organization. That doesn't mean that you don't direct at a certain point the system, but it needs, of course, certain direction or certain correction at certain point. And we meet and we discuss things. And another thing is that not all the people can decide individually what to do at any time. That has to be controlled. And another way, it would be like an anarchy. That would not work, I think.
So far, all the questions have come from this side of the room. I'm wondering what's happening over here. We have one here, Fern, and then there's one at the back also.
With your background with agroecology, is there anything that you're doing in terms of research for native perennial polyculture? So the perennials, I saw a lot of annuals, but are you working with some perennials and some native perennials?
Yeah, of course. My background in agroecology has to be with systems integration. The integration at different levels. Integration of practices in rotation in the soil or social integration. And in the middle of all these integrations, you have the components of the farming system. The components, the living components of farming system can be more or less diversified. You can have everything in a farm, looking like a zoo or like a botanical garden. But that diversification need to have sense, need to have logics. And when we talk about perennials, we talk more about fruits. Fruits, we have more than 40 different species of fruits in the farm, mostly for our own consumption. And we talk about forages, so trees, forestry systems for animal feeding. That's the approach we follow. And we combine them in many different ways through the area we have. For example, when we talk about gliricidia, is a tree we plant in fences, they play different roles. They play the role of fence, but we cut the branches to give to the animals very high protein forage, but also they flower, they bloom this time of the year, February and March, and we get specific honey from them. We planted more than 10,000 of these trees in the fences of the farm, and we get a very high benefit from them.
In the back, Mariah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about the biodigester that you have on the farm, and besides manure, what else you feed to it to create the gas.
We built the most simple sample, the most simple biodigester sample or biodigester model, the biodigester model we found in literature. I was working in energy systems for about 10 years before coming to the farm, so I knew many of the models. And we constructed the biodigester with rocks. With the rocks, we constructed the beds or the barn. And it is working since the first day we fill it like a wash. It works every day. It gives us 2 cubic meters of biogas. It has been a very successful way of capturing the energy in the biomass or the energy from sun, but also we have the slurries, very good quality slurries that we store in tanks, in 3 tanks, after the escaping valve of the biodigester, and it is used for fertilization of the soils. So we make the recycling of nutrients and recycling of energy. And the biodigester helps a lot for that.
Other questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I would like to know what makes you start this project.
Sorry?
I would like to know what makes you start this project, like why?
Why?
Yes.
The question was what motivated him to start the project?
The motivations?
Yes.
Well, I was born in Havana. A few days after, my parents brought me to the Animal Science Institute, where they used to work. So I could tell that I was born in the Animal Science Institute. And all my childhood was there. I participated in many discussions of my parents with their colleagues about the future of Cuban agriculture. And at the beginning of the 90s, being a student of agronomy in the Agrarian University of Havana, I was one of the founder members of the Cuban Organic Farming Association. During several years, I was part of that organization that spread the word and tried to communicate the benefits of organic agriculture and agroecology for our country. Then later, after graduated, I participated as a researcher in many projects and many research projects and promotion of agroecology in Cuba and in Latin America and also around the world. But after about 20 years of professional life, I felt that there was a gap in my wish of transforming Cuban agriculture and in giving a message to the international the international community in the agroecological efforts to transform the world food system. And that was the main motivation for me to start. Of course, it was not a personal decision. It was a decision to take together with my family. And I had family motivations. I wanted to change my life, even if it was a comfortable life, I would say, traveling and having a comfortable house in Havana and a car and a nice family I love. I wanted to make a new step in my professional and my family life. If you want to really understand something, do it. If you want to really communicate something strong enough for the people, you need to feel convinced. And to feel really convinced, you have to practice it. You cannot tell it in theory the people what to do or what you do. Thank you.
We have a second question over here.
You talked about managing a group and balancing freedom to act with correction when necessary. I'm curious, what are questions that you return to over and over to ask your workers, questions that you find helpful?
More than, I don't know what percentage, 60, 70% of what you do in agriculture and in life has to be with organization. You have to organize what everyone does. And to achieve that organization, you need to spend lots of time not only telling the people what to do, but letting them search in the way to organize themselves. And I don't want to stay all the time telling the people what to do, but I suggest in some way, by doing with them certain activity, what is the best way I think we could do. But when we are like a family and they propose me or tell me another way of doing, and then I need to have, or you need to have, the capacity of ceding power to the people. So to give power to the people to act without waiting for your decision. And that happens every day. I have received a message today telling me that everything goes well there. And that's a very good sign. For me, when I'm not there, they know what to do. And they act following their knowledge, but also their instincts, what they think is right to do. And we agree with each other that we are not talking about perfect scenarios.
Are your staff members experienced farmers, or were they trained on your farm?
Sorry?
Are the staff members experienced farmers, or have they learned as a result of being with you?
All of them were experienced farmers. I was the only beginner. But I think we have a lot to learn from each other. My knowledge was not the most important during the process, as I told before. The most important was to value the knowledge of all the people working in the farm. And they have lots of skills that can be used in many different moments during the process. That was the most important driver for success. And not telling that because I am, how you say, when you don't want to merit you, by humility or so, but my contribution in terms of knowledge in the farm maybe don't surpass the 10%. And that's Finca Marta, the memory of my mother, and I'm happy that many people love her memory. And they are not working only for money, they are working for the common objective of improving the system, and they're more and more, and we are more and more purified people for the benefit of our team, our community, and our country.
Well, that's almost a wonderful way to end, but I have another question for you. Clearly, you've been thinking a lot about the way in which Finca Marta will be contributing to transformation of agriculture in Cuba, but also in the world. If you think maybe 10 or 20 years from now, what are the signs of transformation in Cuba and in the world that you would like to see?
I'm sure it's not going to happen great transformation. I'm sure there are too many walls to overcome and too many difficulties to face. And coming from an academic scenario, an academic area, I think that reframing the way we think based on the practice is going to give us lots of strength. But there is something very difficult to change, and it's the mindset of people and the mindset of the society in general. And this is going to need decades and generations ahead to change. So what we can do, and I'm not being pessimistic for that, but what we can do is making our best in showing that other ways are possible for the transformation of our food system, and that we can achieve food justice and food sovereignty from our own experience. We are not going to achieve that at country level or at the world level. We have to achieve this transformation at the local level. And many local experiences are going to be joined and are going to make the difference in our countries and in the world.
So I've got lots of questions, but I'm trying to make sure all of you have an opportunity to ask. So while we're waiting for the next hand to go up, can you talk about pest management? What are the major pests that you have?
Don't make me that, please.
And what methods do you use to manage those pests?
Well, we don't manage pests. We allow them to work. It is very interesting that we have identified different pests or diseases during the process of planting and growing all these vegetables. And we have two main pillars for this ecological management of pests. And one is the improvement of the soil. So we were improving the soil conditions as a way to improve the plant growth and a healthier production. And secondly, diversity. Because we have a so diversified system, then the threats we have from pests is very low. When we had an appearance of certain bug or certain pest, or certain damage, we acted on them, manually or mechanically. And that was sometimes over some run in the night, we went for snails, hunting snails, and we reduced you cannot do that in 1,000 hectares, but you can do that in 2 hectares. And you can define where the focus is and go for them during the night. In that way, you know better how they behave in the hours they work. And when you make a negative selection, you reduce the population and they don't cause damage anymore for months or years. They don't appear anymore in populations that can affect the system. The same towards ants or towards worms, and we were identifying the places where they are making a damage and making early harvest earlier, or negative selection of the plants. And in that way, we were achieving that equilibrium, agroecological equilibrium we are following. If I tell you in percentage what is the effect that they cause, the negative effect they cause, maybe it's less than 0.5% in total compared to the incomes we have from production. So it is, how you say, non-significant for our work.
We have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. And let's see first if anybody, he's had two opportunities, and I know he's got lots he wants to ask.
I'm happy to defer.
Okay, but if nobody else has a question, we'll go back to you. Anybody who hasn't spoken, yes.
What is your favorite thing about living on a farm? But then also, what is your favorite thing to grow?
Sorry?
What is your favorite thing to grow?
The favorite scene, the favorite cherry tomatoes. I like a lot the cherry tomatoes, and the people like a lot. We started in the nurseries of the municipality, and the children like a lot cherry tomatoes. It's a very new product in Cuba. Maybe we are the greatest cherry tomato producer in Cuba. We are producing about 200 pounds 2 times in a week for about 6 months.
She had a first part to her question, too. She asked, what is your favorite thing about living on a farm?
The interaction with nature and the variability and the diversity of scenarios you have every day, and the comprehension and how to read the environment. It's the capacity the farmers have that we don't have. I don't feel like a farmer still. I feel like a beginner. But the farmers, the original farmers, know very well how to read the environment. And they have very clear the signs from the natural environment. There was a friend of mine asked that how many years you think you need to make a farmer? And that's a question for you. How many years you think? Don't answer those. Sorry?
A lifetime.
A lifetime. He said me 3 lifetimes. 3 lives. Because it's part of the inheritance you get from your parents and the parents of your parents. And it is all a transmission of lots of information that you cannot have in a life. So you acquire many of this knowledge by interacting with your relatives and with your colleagues and farmers around you in your life. So it is a very complex understanding about nature, about society, about life in the countryside. And what we have today is a very big disconnection with what farmers know in rural areas. And that's why when people go to the farm and I see them very happy, I understand they're feeling in some way that they are getting connected for some hours. But there is a sensation, I think, that people feel of relief when they are in touch with the natural environment and with the agricultural practice. There is something telling in the background of people that they lack of that connection.
You started with the metaphor of the well. Could you speak a little more about it?
A little bit more about the metaphor. Every day is the first day. If you see that you have achieved already your work or your objective, your goal, then it has no sense. The metaphor has to be with that. The metaphor of the well has to be with continue fighting for your objectives and continue fighting for your dreams. And there are many other emerging ideas and emerging properties coming from the well. And it is strange because we had not much to value during the process of breaking rocks. But being in interaction with Juan Machado, that is a farmer, son of farmers, that in the same time they were sons of farmers, gave me enough connection with all that history of farming in the area. And we are writing a book now. My wife is an editor, and I am putting many of these ideas in a book that we want to communicate in short stories. And the metaphor is every day in our lives. So I see the metaphor everywhere. I see the metaphor here. I see the metaphor in me digging the well 6 years ago and now staying here telling you the story. That's part of the metaphor. When we didn't see, in many ways, a future for the farm, a clear future for the farm, but we continue digging the well, looking for that future, and now we can tell you the story of what we have achieved in this short period of time.
So please join me in thanking Fernando.
Thank you.